According to a Dutch consultancy firm, report indicates that widespread congestion at the Nigerian port is costing the nation about 55 million US dollars, which is equivalent to about 20.8 billion naira per day. Experts identified closure of land borders, insecurity, inadequate infrastructure, lack of synergy among relevant government agencies, as well as the preference of the Lagos seaport by shippers as the major factors responsible for the congestion of Nigerian seaports. Other factors include siting of factories and tank farms close to seaport, which cause traffic congestion at the gate of the seaport, thereby affecting ease of doing business in the country. Worried by this development, the federal government took some bold steps to congest the ports. These include rehabilitation of the Onitsha River Port in Anambra State and that of Baro in Niger State, among others. Other measures include diversion of vessels to other terminals, such as Eastern and nearby ports, if they cannot be served at the Lagos Port Complex within 4 days. Analysts believe provision of good infrastructure and other incentives could attract importers to other seaports to reduce the gridlock at the Lagos seaports. What can be done to make other seaports functional to attract shippers? What strategy should be adopted by relevant agencies to allow seamless movement and process at seaports? What incentives should be put in place to lure importers to inland river ports and other ports in the country apart from Lagos? Guest on Good Morning Nigeria will prove a way out of this economic challenge shortly.
Many thanks, Aisha Obale, for that background. Now, joining us in the studio to discuss this issue in further detail here in Abuja, as well as at our network center in Lagos and also via Zoom. First, let's welcome Chief George Mogalu, who is Managing Director of the National Inland Waterways Authority. That's NIWA. Chief Mogalu, delighted to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewers.
Now, also here with us in the studios is our regular transportation analyst. It's a lawyer, and that's Mani Ochuboju. Mani, delighted to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers.
Joining us from Lagos studio is Hassan Bello, Executive Secretary and Chief Executive Officer, Nigerian Shippers Council. Good to have you on the program.
For the opportunity. Good morning.
Thank you. And joining us also via Zoom is Oyewole Lanre, Managing Director, Boss Auto Detail. We're glad to have you on the program this morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, we are talking about the congestion in the ports. Now, let's have a background to that, and let's assume that the coasts are really in need of assistance and help. Now, National Inland Waterways Authority, NIWA, Transport Consultant, the Shippers Council, and of course, Auto Detail. These are key stakeholders in this area. Let's hear your views about this decongestion. How decongested are Nigerian ports? Let's start with George Mogolu. How decongested are Nigerian ports? So much so that attention is now beautiful.
How congested? I would rather
how congested it is.
I think it's quite congested. The ports, the seaports are quite congested. There's no doubt about that, because if you look at the volume of cargo that comes in there, when you lay it side by side with the evacuation, the road challenge and what have you, I think it's quite congested. And that's why government, most times, you hear one policy or the other all aimed at decongesting these ports. There's no doubt as to the fact that our ports are quite congested.
Really congested, is that true, Mani?
Yes, I agree with Dr. George. Our ports are exceedingly congested. They are one of the most congested ports in the world, actually.
In the whole world?
Oh, in the whole world.
Right.
And that is not a flattering statistics. A cargo would be in our port for 3 weeks, and it is there redundant, wasting away. In other ports in the world, average turnaround time is 3 days. If it is late, long, 5 days. In Nigeria, starting point is 3 weeks. Starting point is 3 weeks. Not to talk, that is in the port, not to talk of the extreme difficulties of entering the port with your vehicle or trailer to retrieve your ware. and the further difficulty in getting out of the port. So the turnaround time altogether, you're looking at about 2 months, something for 3-4 days for you to get your goods out of the port.
All right, Mani, thanks a lot. Let's go over to Lagos, where Hassan Bello was introduced a while ago. Hassan Bello, once again, a pleasure to have you. We've talked about this issue multiple times. You've been with us on Good Morning Nigeria on this same subject matter. I was going to ask you, all right, what is the situation at the seaports, more particularly those of Lagos, in terms of congestion? But I will give you this as a hint, because I know you know what the situation is. The last time I was in Lagos, you could see again the traffic congestion of flatbed trucks seeking to go to the ports, of fuel tankers seeking to go to the ports. You could find them all around Western Avenue, straight up on the bridge leading you to Apapa. And so that tells us the story. Why is this persisting?
Effectiveness. The situation we find ourselves now, it's that of congestion, but that is attributable to many factors, chief of which, in my opinion, is plain lack of planning. We should have seen that there will be growth in population, in our consumption pattern, in so many other things, so that we will plan the Apapa ports to, take into consideration what will have happened from 1980s to now. Population growth 2.5% conservatively. We should have, opened up, the ports, so to say. And the main reason being dependent on one major source of evacuating or delivery of cargo, which is the road. We don't have rail connection or effective rail connection. It is only now that we're using the inland waterways. So a port is as good as the multimodal connection it will have. You can't rely on one mode of transportation. That is the road. Besides, the infrastructure has failed. The roads that we depend on also, has failed with a lot of, patches here and there. There is now going to be reconstruction of all the roads. But there is cargo clearance procedures which are primitive, laborious, and onerous, and cause a lot of inefficiency. For example, lack of scanners at the port, which means 100% examination of cargo, is tedious. It's 5 hours thing for one container, while if you had scanner, maybe it's 5 minutes. So a lot of things are on, but the most important thing is to reflect what the government has done. And government is now very much on the infrastructure. Government is providing scanners. We are experimenting, let's say, or reintroducing multimodal delivery and evacuation of cargo. There is also patronage of the eastern ports, which is very important. Nigerian Ports Authority, for example, reduced the charges at eastern ports, and I think now we have reasonable traffic at the eastern port. But we have to talk about larger issues of connectivity with the hinterland. We have to talk of the seaports. Also, which should be other ports, like the dry ports, the river ports. So I think altogether, I'm seeing that if all things come together by first quarter of next year, we will have some semblance of order. And the dwell time, of cargo, which my colleague has just said, will dwindle. We are looking at 7 days. But then Nigerian ports also operate only during the daytime. We should have 24-hour port operations. It's like the airport. The airplane lands at 3 a.m. at 2. But in Nigerian ports, from Monday to Friday, and everybody shuts down. That which we are now trying to revive, it is very important. All this coming together, we will have, a more efficient port system.
Well, thank you so much, Hassan Bello. Let me get down to Mani Ochugboju. You're a transport consultant. You heard what he said.
Absolutely.
And then it so seems as if we had, there are 6 ports in Nigeria, I believe. And of course, the notorious one and the most worrisome one is the Lagos, Apapa, Tinkan ports. And the other ones there really are not so much congested, I would say. Why is the situation, why is Lagos so much notorious in congestion? And why is it that people seem to be heading towards Lagos and Lagos instead of Calabar, rivers and other ports?
Let me start with agreeing with Hassan Bello. He said there have been an issue of lack of planning.
Okay.
Not only is there issue of lack of planning, there is also issue of very bad planning. Over concentration of port resources in Lagos was very bad planning. We have ports in the eastern region of Nigeria.
What do you mean by port resources?
Port resources, we have 2 ports in Lagos, for example. And of these 2 ports in Lagos, we have Warri Port, we have Calabar Port, we have One Port, we have Port Harcourt Port. We have 4 other ports outside Lagos. In fact, 5 to be precise. Of these 5 ports, they have cargo traffic of just about 15%. While Lagos alone has about 85% cargo traffic. That is error of planning. 2, we have other facilities in Lagos that are inadequate now for Lagos alone. Because Lagos, as Hassan Bello rightly pointed out, is growing. And Lagos is chewing, is biting more than it can chew. Why can't we utilize ports in One? Why can't we utilize ports in Warri? Why can't we utilize port in Port Harcourt? Why can't we utilize port in Calabar, for example? These are what do you call it? Seaports. We have river ports. We have Onitsha Port. Onitsha Port is functional. And right now, it is literally redundant. We have Barrow Port. Barrow Port in Niger State. Barrow Port in Niger State is one of those stories of redundancy and waste. It is also functional. And it is not in use. It's not in use because the roads leading to it are non-existent. You can't even get to Barrow Port with a motorbike. It is that tragic. You spend nearly 40 billion fixing a port, and you don't have any road to it. And it's been like that for the last 3 years. The president commissioned it last year before the election, and sadly, he came by helicopter because that's the only way he could get there, and left by helicopter, and it is still there, redundant. Onitsha Port is fantastic, it's there. There's Lokoja Port, incomplete. There's Oguta Port, not far from Onitsha, just 70 kilometers from Onitsha. That is also incomplete. These are critical infrastructure assets lying waste. Lastly, I will just agree with Hassan Bello. We also have dry ports. We have 7 dry ports that are commissioned and gazetted in Nigeria, 7. And of that 7, about 2, 3 are almost near functional stages, like Kaduna, Funtua, Jos, Haipan in Jos. Then, interestingly, we have, what's it called, Aba. There's a dry port in Aba. Dry port in Aba that should be functional by now. Aba is one of the most vibrant economic regions in the whole of Africa. Why should Aba dry port not be functional? It's inexplicable. Then we have Ibadan dry port. Ibadan dry port is particularly strategic because of its location to Lagos and its multimodal transport that is extravagant, really. You have narrow gauge rail line, you have standard gauge rail line, all connecting to Ibadan, and a reasonably good road getting to Ibadan. It's not like Baru that has no road. So Ibadan has no excuse not to be functional and reducing the pressure on Lagos. So to that extent, Lagos is oversubscribed. Lagos is an expression of bad planning and bad implementation of our national policies. Yes, Lagos was federal capital, I know that. And because it was federal capital, there's that bias for Lagos. Lagos was not a Western region territory. It's a federal capital territory. And because of that, there was this bias for it. But then there's also a historical negligence of the Eastern region. Eastern region, the ports in the east, Port Harcourt Port, also has a historical baggage that we don't need to go into now. But then, majority of the cargoes entering Nigeria are generated by businessmen from the Eastern region. Majority of it, about 40-45%, significantly or more, go to Onitsha alone, or Aba and thereabout. So they too bear some responsibility for not even utilizing Onne Port or Port Harcourt Port or even Calabar Port or some of the river ports like Onitsha, particularly Onitsha Port.
All right, Mane, you've raised a number of points. I know that the MD of NIWA will respond to some of the issues that you have raised, particularly with regard to the status of some of the inland ports that we have, Barrow and Onitsha in particular. But we earlier introduced Oyewole Lanre, who is Managing Director of Boss Auto Detail, and is with us via Zoom. So let's have his first take on this topic. Mr. Lanre, tell us something. How much of an agony do you continue to endure in using the ports?
Honestly, if there's a better word to call more than an agony, it is a nightmare going through in and out of Lagos ports. But I can tell you one thing: all the panelists have actually echoed my mind out aloud, because I think Lagos, for no reason, should the federal government should declare reform emergency in port situation, especially that of Lagos. Because for me, you talk of congestion as if we're the one that receive the high volume of goods. No, it is just because of the other ports are not functioning at all. I feel we should make Lagos less of interest. There should be a firm process of reform at the port, such that other ports will function well, just as it has been captured by every other panelist there. The going and out of Lagos, the roads, the processes, the bureaucratic red tape policy is not encouraging at all. You can imagine where you have your container there, naturally the time scale should.
Well,
the turnaround. So how do you do this? We have to look at other ports. People from the eastern side, there should be optimal use of that port there. The dry port. Yes, the government is trying. But the question is, how best are we putting this into optimal use? How best are we going to ensure that other ports are functioning so that there will not be too much dependent on Lagos port? Everybody wants to come to Lagos. The roads are inaccessible. Good, they are doing road now. I can attest to you that the road to Apapa, I think towards, as at my last experience after my two, is enjoying a new facelift. That's good. That's wonderful. I must commend them for that. But when will they finish this? Because it's taking longer than necessary. If you go in and out of port there, you might not want to go there the next day. Then the process itself is cumbersome. It's torturing. You look at what you go through, the clearing agents, and the excuse they are going to give you is what you can see. Because you have to, you are paying twice for what ordinarily you should have paid once. Why? Because there's no firm process of deterrent to how you can get your things out, fast as possible, so that you can make at least a little profit out of what you're doing. But the time itself will kill that process. The time will take away your profit, to take away your sweat, and make you frustrated. So it's very difficult doing business when you have to have your goods come through Lagos. But the truth is, we will remain undaunted. We are committed to, policy reform. We are trusting and hoping that government will do that which is the needful. And from the development of other ports, the dry ports, the eastern ports, what needed to be done at the access road to that area, once the access road there is good enough, then there'll be less interest for people who are on that axis like the Aba, which to me, I can agree that is the commercial hub of Africa, in view of the volume of what they bring in there. So it will just make Lagos less attractive, such that other people can use other ports. But the dependence on Lagos is annoying. The experience is not what you want to share with anybody. Because when you go there, the road itself, the process itself, the red tape policy, the extortion by touts and all that, I think an emergency on port reform should be immediate. It's urgent, such that we can enjoy this thing. When government do so much and you can't see anything, then that means we have to think out of the box. They have to go there and study this very well. For businessmen, I bring in cars an average of 3-4 containers every month. But now I have to just slow down, because it will take almost a month for you to get 2 containers out for business reasons. One.
Well, it seems we've lost Oyewole Lanre there, but let's get to the Managing Director, National Inland Waterways Authority, George Mogolu. You've heard what you said and what they said, and of course, the onus lies partly on your shoulder, looking at how the inland waterways could assist in trying to decongest Lagos Port and some other ports in this country. Do you agree with the position of Lanre there?
Yes, not only Larry, I agree with even the one Manny raised. These are fundamental issues that are clear, which are not subject to trying to change them. Let me put some issues in proper perspective. Like Manny rightly observed, the Onitsha River Port is a world-class port. The Barrow River Port, world-class port. When I mean world-class in the sense of proper construction, properly equipped to serve the purpose for which they were established. And like he also mentioned, as we speak now, the Lokoja River Port, the Jamata River Port, is over 55% completed. Same applies to Guta River Port, over 55% completed. And these are ports that it is either we complete them or the investment already made by the federal government becomes a waste. And that is what I don't want to hear, wasting resources. Now, when I came into office, I saw this issue of decongesting the Lagos port as one of my primary considerations, because the analysis we have done, confirms the fact that over 50% of the containers that arrive in Lagos end in the southeast, either in Onitsha or Aba.
Yeah.
And over that number, that percentage also from One also ends up either in Aba or in Onitsha. And the question is, if 1,000 containers, for example, are going to leave Lagos to Onitsha, what that translates to is that 1,000 trailers must be on the road.
Yeah.
If it's 1 million containers, 1 million trailers will be on the road. Yeah. And our roads are not designed to carry these weights. So there is no way our infrastructure, road infrastructure, will survive. So that alone is enough consideration for us to think out of the box. And I now said, we must move containers, consignments by water. Nigeria is a country blessed by God. We have over 10,000 kilometers of waterway, and you can reach 28 states of this country by water. Okay. Sadly, it's only over 3,000 kilometers that is all year navigable. But within these 3,000 kilometers that is all year navigable, you can do Onitsha, Lagos. You can do Onitsha, One. On the 16th of last month precisely, after I've thought about this, I said, okay, let me try something. I got a team. We sat down and in our authority. What do we do to move containers between these major ports of Lagos, of One to Onitsha? Then we said we put up a team. We engaged the barge owners. They bought into our vision. And for the 16th of last month, we moved barges from One to Onitsha. And they moved empty containers to One successfully. So we decided to break that jinx, because nobody now will tell me that it's impossible. As we speak, we've set up the machinery to move containers by water, also from Lagos to Onitsha. And we want to do this within this month, so that we can also break that jinx. Because if we successfully do that, I don't see why we cannot remove all these containers that are intended for Onitsha or Aba. Why can't we move them by water? Because once we do that, not only would we have created an alternative means of transport, we have reduced the pressure on our roads. Now, fortunately for me, the chief executives of all maritime agencies, we have a platform where we meet. We meet on a monthly basis now. The last one was hosted by Niwa in Lokoja. Everybody agrees with me. They've all bought into this. So I've received all the needed support, both from my two ministers, both from the ministry, both from the presidency. Everybody shares the sentiment that we must make our river ports functional. If we're able to do that, now the next stage is building confidence. Because everybody will want to see what has government done before the private sector can comfortably key in. Yeah. That was why we initiated the move to do it first. And now, having succeeded, 2 weeks ago, I was in Onitsha. I met with the Chamber of Commerce and the business community. We discussed this, and they are willing to key in into this vision. But I have one challenge there. And that challenge, which I've started working on now, is making Onitsha a destination port. That is one way we can reduce the congestion. Because if Onitsha becomes a destination port, for example, and Barrow is a destination port, for example, what that means is that you can ship your cargo directly from port of origin to Onitsha port. If it lands in our seaports like Lagos or Ne, you cannot move it by barge to these ports because the vessels, those large vessels, may not be able to get to the river ports. Then you barge them and move them. Because once you do that now, the business community in these locations like Onitsha and Aba will now be forced, will now be compelled, will now be excited to now ship their cargoes directly to these ports. So that provisional is removed because these cargoes will not be offloaded in the seaports. They cannot be transloaded to these barges at the point of arrival, and then they are moved to these ports. And once you do that, you reduce pressure. If we're able to make our waterways functional, like Manny rightly observed, the major challenge we have in Barrow today is not even the draft like people talk about. It's the roads. Yeah. And when I came into office, I realized that I started engaging government. The federal government graciously, I started work on that in line with the directive of Mr. President. I also engaged the state government. I talked with them. I met with the governor. He also is excited about getting the port to work. They are starting a road on their own also, because at the end of the day, by the time the federal government completes the one they are doing and the one the Niger State government wants to do, we'll end up having 2 access routes to Barrow Port, and that is key because it's going to open up the port, and then we'll have the opportunity of moving cargo through these routes. Because unless we do that, you see, this multimodal means of transportation is also very key. Fortunately, like you heard Hassan say, the rail lines. The government is taking the rail lines now from the ports to the out of the port to various locations, because that will also provide an opportunity. Because in civilized democracies, in the civilized world, bulk cargo is not moved by road. Yeah. Majorly, bulk cargo is moved either by water or by rail. Because everybody is conscious of the fact that you cannot subject your road. Can you imagine, like Manny rightly said, 5,000 trailers going to the Apapa port on a daily basis?
Yes, sir.
That is outrageous.
And that no matter how strong the road
no matter how strong the road is, you can't survive 3 rainy seasons. You can't survive 3 rainy seasons. 5,000 trailers.
Yes, sir.
Which means in every 10 days, 50,000 trailers in and out of a particular location. That's a major challenge.
In most cases, the trucks are dead weight.
Yeah, dead weight.
They are stationary.
They're stationary.
On the queue, waiting.
Like you said, if you go to the bridge, even in risk our bridges, you find trailers standing there for 1 month, for 2 weeks. Dead weight at a particular point for 2 weeks.
So Lagos also has to worry about its own survival, because if those bridges begin to give way, then we're back to the 1970s when there was vehicular traffic congestion in Lagos.
Unfortunately, the NTA has, like Hassan also said, which is also a very welcome development, the introduction of various incentives. Because you may recall that not long ago, a large mask liner came to One, it was last month.
Yeah, One, yeah.
A very large mask liner. In fact, the biggest, as I was told, came to One. That is a sign in the right direction, because that has also created giving the clear impression and commitment of government, because the charges, the fees that has to do, it has related with cargo clearing and what have you for the southeast was released.
There are associated issues. I believe that those associated issues have been taken care of. I mean, there was a time they were raising the issue of sea robbery and piracy and so on and so forth. But there's a point that the Executive Secretary of the Shippers Council made, among several other points. I would like you to respond to this. That's Hassan Bello. He said one of the causative factors for congestion in Lagos has to do with the operating hours of the officials. They come to work at 8 perhaps, probably knock off by 4 or 5. In other words, they work at the daytime. At the airports, our airports, most of our airports, the international airports, they operate 24 hours a day. I mean, one of the excitements that you would have found in recent years in Nigerian airports is that you can take off at midnight and land at another airport, local flight. And you have an interagency meeting on a monthly basis, which you said. How might this issue be addressed so that come rain, come shine, night and day, the ports are in operation? You have workers who are running their shifts. Rather than having just daytime, when it is 5 o'clock, the man locks up his pen, goes home.
Yes, this issue is a part of the reforms that is ongoing now. Because I remember that is one of the issues that was presented to us in one of our meetings, in fact, the meeting in Lagos and then the one in Lokoja. And we appraised the effort that is being made to make our ports 24-hour functional. It's part of the things that is being done now. Effort is being made to bring that into fruition, because certainly there is no way you can run a port effectively on a 12-hour basis. You can't. It's not possible. You see, if we want to achieve, like the turnaround time Mani is talking about 3-4 days, Hassan was saying the maximum of 7 days. Fair enough. If it was 7 days, if we achieve 7 days from 2 months down to 7 days, that's a magnificent effort. But the truth here remains that is in the offing. Work is going on in that direction, because it's part of the reforms that we discussed, and the NTA is working towards to ensure that our ports are 24-hour functional.
Well, that shouldn't be such a big deal to sort out. I'll give you an example. In Lagos, when LASMA was starting, LASMA is the Lagos State Transport Management Authority. It started under Tinubu when he was governor. When they launched LASMA, they were operating like the civil service. You come to work at 8, by 4 o'clock you knock off. So peak periods when Lagos traffic is craziest, the LASMA officials are not at their posts. Peak period when people are closing from work, LASMA officials are not at their post, because they would have done their regular shift 8 hours and knocked off. And the government then said, no, that this is not going to be workable if we are to realize the objective of really helping to control and manage traffic in Lagos. So they began running shift system, which also meant that you had to hire more hands, so that before crack of dawn, you find LASMA officials at their duty posts. Late into the night, you also find LASMA officials at their duty posts. I know that the ports can be a different ballgame, but it's workable.
It's workable. Nobody says it's not workable. But the point here is that you have to build synergy with other key players in the port.
Namely?
Port is a lot different from that. For example, you have to bring in the customs.
Yes, sir.
You have to bring in the banks. Okay? You have to bring in the security agencies. It's not something that the management of the port, by way of NPA coming out of decree it into existence. Like in our last meeting, customs was invited. In our last 2 meetings, we invite customs. We invite the marine police, the newer police, we invite them to be part of what we are doing. So you need to build synergy. You need to get every part, every component to key into it, so that you can now have a seamless. Otherwise, you solve one problem and create a new one.
I just wonder, Honorable, I would like Hassan Bello to respond to this. Alhaji Hassan Bello, what's your reaction to what the Managing Director of NIWA is saying with regard to getting the right synergy? You see, you're slightly distracted there. Hassan Bello, what is your reaction to this? Yes, we know that there are multiple agencies that work, but again, if you were to use the analogy of our airports, customs are the airports round the clock. Immigration are the airports round the clock. Airport securities are the airports round the clock for international flights and even for local flights. Could this be a challenge in trying to achieve round-the-clock operations at our seaports?
It is important we have that synergy, as Chief Mogolu has said. But even more important is technology. We need to have a digital port. We need to have a contactless port. When you go to the port or the port environment, it is seedy and not acceptable. With the millions of people milling around, you have people selling even engine oil, some kiosk. In the whole port environment needs to be sanitized. And if you have digitalization of the port, it means there may not be human contact. Less people will go to the port. If I may make the comparison with the banks, if you remember, the banking halls, maybe 10 years, 5 years back, were full of people jostling, making transactions. But with the introduction of technology, you go to a bank, you hardly see anybody because all the transactions are done online. Again, this is one of the most important things for us to do, is to digitalize the port, make transactions online, and having a port community system. This is also one of the cardinal reforms which the Chief Executive Forum will have to look at. We have found out that 62% of the port operations are actually done online. But we want to push it further, that in the first quarter, we'll have about 85%. The more you reduce human contact, the more efficient the port will come. But I agree also with what Larry said, very beautifully put, that it is tedious. Lagos is oversubscribed. However, we must take note that it is the shipper who decides where his cargo will be brought to. We cannot decree or influence or put a gun to the shipper's head and said, you have to take your cargo to Port Harcourt or Calabar. So most people prefer Lagos because of certain issues. Cost, for example, it may be costly even by the, freight. If it is $1,000 to bring a container from China to Apapa, it is $1,500 to do the same in Calabar or something, certainly because of security issues, but which I think the government is also looking at. So what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of hope, that putting all these things together, and again, government is not just lying idle. Government is building a new port at Lekki. The port at Lekki will have profound effect on shipping, not only in Nigeria, but the whole of Africa. Because this is a large port, adequate draft, large vessels, economies of scale, situated in a free zone for export. The same thing with dry ports. For example, the Kaduna dry port is a port of destination and is a port of origin. However, we are always mindful of the rail capacity because goods are moved by rail because of the volume, and someone said bulk. That is true. Mani also, said these ports must come into operation. And that is also very important for us to do that. So what I'm trying to say is I see a brighter thing. The government, as Larry said, is building that road, but we cannot rely on Apapa and Tinkan Islands. Rail are being pushed to that. We need to build modern infrastructure. We need to build more ports, like the Lekki port, like the port in Ibom, Akwa Ibom, and maybe some 1 or 2 Boni deep sea ports. These are also very instructive and very important. But I think what we need to do to make Apapa Tinkan effective is that 24-hour port operation, and we can see what is militating against it. It's lack of technology. Why will everybody go to the port and find out the expected date of arrival of a ship when you can sit in your office and find that? The bill of lading is electronically sent now. No need for you to go and say you need to stamp payments or to make payments. The banks are there. We work with the banks during the lockdown, and they are far ahead. The custom also is very good technologically. The custom, the e-custom thing is a very good prospect. Once we have the custom, the banks, the terminals themselves, the shipping companies, and the freight forwarders and the shippers in sync in one community, then you will see that the issue of clearance of cargo will come to 7, which is the regional average. We are now doing 20, 21 days, despite all the distortion. Now, the road has distorted, or the lack of road, or the congestion has distorted the whole economies of the port. And we need to go and clean, clean the port environment, because the port environment does not encourage, any meaningful, even if you build the roads, there could be the problem of people selling engine oil, trucks staying there, causing congestions. And we need custom to also abridge their processes so that we can move ahead. So I believe Mani, who is very passionate, about dry ports, Kano, for example, has just spent 1.4 billion in provision of infrastructure for the Kano dry port. Look at the Maradi, rail line. Look at what it can do. 300,000 tons of cargo to be moved from Lagos to Kano. And you could see what it will have on the local economy. In Kaduna, the dry port has already brought some semblance of growth in the economy, employment, so many other activities related to the port. So when you have a dry port, you have a seaport, what we are doing is taking the economies of Lagos or part of it, or Port Harcourt, to those places. You open up the economy, you include people, and also for export, because export, is a must for Nigeria, as we will say. We have to export. We really need to export. And these are apertures for export, which we have to do keen. I won't go as long as saying what Larry said, we declare emergency, but I think I agree with you, there should honestly be appraisal. And I think that forum for chief executives of agencies is doing exactly that. Thank you.
So much, Hassan Bello. I think you raised a lot of points here which are really heartwarming and charring. The digitization thing is one great thing that should be pursued seriously, because that is the vogue all over, and that's the in thing in all ports across the world and in all life endeavors anyway. There are so many issues you raised too, which I think, Kingsley, Nigeria is blessed, really, very much blessed.
Big time, no doubt about that.
Look at the ports all over, the dry ports, the sea ports, there were so many of them. But so much so now that you find attraction in one port like Lagos, Tinkan. What makes Lagos so much attractive? Let me put this to Larry, Oyowe Larry. You earlier said, Kingsley referred to your, what you go through as an agony, but you said that wouldn't be a nice word either. You said it's more or less like a nightmare. I don't know. What's the attraction in Lagos? Why Lagos? Does it mean that your product, for instance, are meant for Lagos people? What's the issue?
Yeah, thank you so much. Basically, there's this, what do you call it, this mindset that if Lagos is as this bad, what could be the condition of other ports? Of course, I have some of my own clients that are in the east, some are in the north central and all that. It will be easy for me to deliver their goods to them, basically cars, if other ports are functioning well. But I can tell you now that the projection of Mr. George Mogalu, I can tell you, is some inspiring, more like a confidence building one, in such that if we have these projections and we are praying that this thing comes to life, then the interest, the attraction to Lagos will fizzle out. Nobody wants to enjoy anything where you are drained, where you are tortured and all that. Like Ms. Alhaji Hassan rightly put, it's an eyesore going into Lagos and Lagos port there. You see miscreants, you see touts, you see people there selling all sorts. Even I don't know what Agbo hawkers or this aphrodisia are doing in Lagos port. For me, it's an eyesore. And you look at how they spill oil. In fact, some of the area have been turned to mechanic garage. That's how bad it is. So you begin to imagine if there's a control of that port at all. Because some of this traffic are self-inflicted. Outside the fact that we have bad road, outside the fact that the roads are not accessible. But like I rightly said, for people applying that road, you can see that a lot has been done on that road to make it motorable. A lot has been put in as in to make it accessible to us. But for the remaining part, we pray and hope that this fast track and is completed. But we still need to do more. the technology Elijah said is what we need to make it seamless, such that we don't have that place too overcrowded. We have nothing to do there. I just have to be in my office, or I receive my let's really copy through via email, via fax. I pay through e-custom. So I can as well sit here and have my agent do the clearing. So without much ado. But because of the, red tape policies, for some that even, there are some people that they don't mean well. At times, you say we scream government, but there are some people that are not doing what is just to be done, the right thing to be done. But of course, you still have the boxes stop at the government table. Somebody has to take responsibility. Somebody has to do this. There should be a firm process of deterrent in everything that will mitigate against a seamless operation at the port. I want to go to Onel. I want to go to Eastern Port if I know the road are accessible. It's just a one dial to my client that there will be no reason for me to do this through Lagos. Instead of, when Elijah said I have to pay 1,005 to Eastern Port as against $1,000 in Lagos. But if you factor the process, if you factor the torture, if you factor the delay, it's amount to the same thing. So if I can get my port cleared at Eastern Port and I have my client there, so it's easy for me. Go there, let the port there, let it be cleared there, and be delivered. So the turnaround time is reduced. Then you can do other things with your time. It saves costs. Then the average turnover itself will increase, because if one container is locked down for an average of 27 days, how are you going to do another one? What about the money that has been tied down? The profits and all that, everything is a one-off process. So I feel with the projection we've had so far, with the plans on ground, I pray that all these things are activated and we can see them, coming to life. The dry port, let it be optimally used. The access road to the Eastern Port, as I rightly mentioned, I've not been there. I don't know the state of the road, so I can't say what I've not seen. But I'm praying that if all these things with the projection of Mogalu, to some extent, I think I'm inspired. But I want it to be more of action than talk, when you can walk your talk. And I've been following you for quite a while, and I feel you will not be there and see things don't going the right way. So we are hoping, we are trusting that things will be done rightly. We have been committed thus far, and we are undaunted. We know things will change for better, and we are hoping that this thing will not be delayed. Because when you look at how many people have gone out of the business just because of the edict, just because of the laws, just because of the red tape policy, then you can imagine the labor force of people who have been thrown out of that job. And because if I have staff strength of about just 15, and if I have to go through the same process and throw them out, what will happen? So we are trusting, we are committed, we are hopeful, but we are talking about time. We're talking about technology. Make it seamless. Let it be easy for us to do. Let us bring it in the road. Let them speed it up. Let them do what they have to do, because that road has been abandoned for long. You cannot say it's just start now. It's been there forever. But from what I've seen, I think I'm inspired. But of course, I need more. We need more. Everybody wants more. We want a situation whereby we can bring in as many as possible and increase the economy up. Let's just do what we have to do right now so that it can go around. Because if I will transfer that cost, I will transfer the energy, I will transfer the edit to my clients. So I will not bear the cost alone. It's a chain, it's a value chain. So for me, we are hoping as a businessman, all we want to do is want to make profit. But you want to make profit in a viable environment. You want to make profit where you know that, okay, you will not, the capital itself will not fizzle out in the process of doing business. So that is my take. We are trusting, we are hoping, and Mr. Mogalu should keep on doing the good work. And we want him to walk the talk. We want more action. We don't want to be told this, and at the end of the day, we don't see anything. We want this thing to come to life, and we are praying that Nigeria will be a better place for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oyewole Lanre, for your comments. I just wanted either yourself, but you've been speaking for a while, just Hassan Bello, speaking futuristically, you're quite excited about the Lekki Deep Sea Port, which is under construction. And we do hear that that will be Nigeria's first deep sea port, actually, because of the draft that it will have, and therefore can accommodate really very large ships. I was just wondering, I'm quite familiar with Lagos. Chief Mogalu tells us here that Barrow Port in Niger is world-class, completed, commissioned, money makes the point, no access to Barrow Port because there are no roads. How will those who will patronize the Lekki Deep Sea Port get in and out of the Lekki Deep Sea Port? Or is it just going to be a deep sea port for purposes of transshipment? In other words, the huge cargoes come in there and then they are taken to other smaller ports. I'm asking this question because I mean, where would the flatbed trucks come from? Are they going to use the third mainland bridge and crash it, or they're going to use the fourth mainland bridge, which is being proposed for construction? Or they're going to be coming through Victoria Island and Lekki itself, where you already have traffic congestion on the 3 lanes on either side. And they'll be going through Ekpe or coming from Ekpe, and you know there's only that bridge across the creek that connects mainland Lagos and Ekpe itself. I'm just wondering about infrastructure, and I haven't seen or heard that there has been 1 foot of rail track constructed to link the Lekki Deep Sea Port and elsewhere in the country. What's going on? Are we just building that port and then saying, okay, later intermodal transportation means will take care of itself?
No, the Lekki Deep Sea Port project also include the intermodal transportation, including rail line. It is a partnership with the Lagos State government, the federal government, represented by NTA, and foreign investment. It is important because what Nigeria needs is to be the hub or the distribution center or the lot center. We have been challenged by ports within the sub-region, and Nigeria, by its nature, economic dominance, ought to be the distribution center. Now, what we have, deep sea port, is different from the ports in Lekki, in Tinkan and Apapa, which are water ports or river ports, if you like, which means it's maintained, dredging now and then. And the draft is maybe only 9 meters, and big ships will not come. So we have become, lesser ports by that. But if we have the deep sea port in Lekki, 16 going to 18, up to 21 meters, which means we will be the hub that is distributing goods to other regions, which means Nigeria will have all the economies or advantages, of a distribution center, more factories, more exports, more employment, and it's not going to rely on the existing structure, as you said. There are plans for the road network, but more is on the rail. More could be on the water, as Mogolu said. So I think that is futuristic, but that is good. But for the COVID and other interruption, we will have, gone to the last stage of that deep sea port in Lekki. But I think now it's about 2021, 2022, you will see that it will come into operation. And, so many jobs, manufacturers bend all that up. But it will have independent, multimodal approach, to access to the port.
Hassan Bello, Executive Secretary, Nigeria Shippers Council. Your thoughts there are very good, and of course, they are futuristic, and indeed, they're looking ahead towards a better economy for Nigeria in the sub-region, where indeed in the driving seat. But all the same, I think I would rather want to say that are we not chewing, rather biting too much that we can chew? That is one. Number two, we have the ports that are already proliferated in the hinterland, especially the inland ports and the rest of them, that are having some issues that really need to be addressed. And the Lagos thing, digitization, as you mentioned, and the rest of them are all issues that require, attention and funding. And here we are today, going into the deep sea, trying to, do something new without really addressing the ones we have. What's your take on that?
We have to leave a legacy, if you like. It is important we have the ports, but we should have more ports. We are just expanding the economy. We are bringing more people into the economy, and we are taking our position as a dominant country, really. So that deep sea port, it should define Nigeria's economic ambition, if you like, as a hub. And a hub means where all the goods are brought, then distributed, as your panelist has said. That is very important. While we're dealing with ports, in Lekki, in Apapa, it is also important we build new infrastructure. Because this government is heavy on infrastructure. You have seen the rail. Now, the rail development in Nigeria is a revolution. If the rail are entrenched as we are having them, then you see the totality, reduction of cost of doing business, reduction in the cost of transportation, movement of goods, and movement of even, passengers, which will have a cohesive society. The reason why we have fragmented society now is because of the absence of rail. But when the rail was functioning, everybody was moving from one place to the other, and there was more integration and cohesion. But what is important is for our infrastructure to be speaking to one another. I like the port in Barrow, for example, to know what's happening at the dry port in Kaduna. It's not just to build infrastructure. This infrastructure must be meaningful. They must look at the totality of what is obtaining now in Nigeria and what we are going to do in the future. We are looking at modern infrastructure. So the Lekki seaport will stop whatever happened in Apapa and Lekki. The Kaduna dry port will not have congestion. They will not have manual issues. They will be digitalized. So for every infrastructure, you build a new one, you learn the lessons. That's what we said, we don't want Apapa 2, in Lekki. And that, I think, is instructive. So the proponents of Lekki, promoters of Lekki Seaport are aware of all the mistakes we have made, and I think they are taking care of that. So to answer your question, it's always good to have. The more ports you have, the more you expand the economy. The more you trigger, movement of cargo, the more government gets revenue, the more people get employment, and the more dominant your position, economic position is within the West and African sub-region is concerned. Thank you.
Master Hassan Bello. Mogolu, there are issues you need to respond, especially from Oyewole Lanre, where he threw the back to your table, talking about making those ports, viable so that they can now leave Lagos to those ports. Some also money. I think you have some issues right here to talk about, because the explanation we really want to have about the Lekki Deep Sea Port and, of course, how to decongest the existing Apapa and Chicken Island ports. We will do that when we come back from the break. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We're reaching you from NTA. We'll not take a break. We'll be back in a moment with more on this topic.
The counsel of our fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
My name is Nando Jamda
Muhammad
Stedita
Hussein Musa Roduna Joel Chinji Said Musa John.
I'm a carpenter. I've been doing this for more than 8 years now.
Ina sai da plantain na kai kimamin shekara 3.
I've been selling my tomatoes for about 10 years now, and I do it for a better Nigeria.
And I do it for a better Nigeria.
Ina wannan sana'ar lemu ne domin Nigeria ta ci gaba. Ina sa domin Nigeria ta kyau. And you can see how we are doing our small little work to make Nigeria great.
As you can see, I'm a technician and I'm doing it to help myself and to help my generation.
Ina zaune ne a Plateau na business. Kuma ina yin wannan domin ci gaban ƙasar Najeriya.
For a better Nigeria. This message is from the National Orientation Agency. Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. We're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Just before we went on a short break, my colleague Nadabo was going to prompt Mane Otuboju to respond to the raft of issues that have been on the table with regard to the congestion activities, futuristic plans, and all that. Mane, what's your take on the matters that have been articulated by the other guests?
Kingsley, I agree with Hassan to some extent. And particularly on the automation, the need to induce or enforce, if we can use that word, digitalization of our port system, to clean it up, to sanitize it. And like Lanre said, there is a need to even declare an emergency. I agree with him. I agree with him largely because in Lagos ports, and this needs to be emphasized, the Nigerian policy from the time of Gowon, where we were having the cement armada to this day, we have been penny-wise, pound-foolish policy. That has been the step, the mode of management of our ports from the time of Gowon. Gowon, we were kids. Gowon left us a legacy of penny-wise, pound-foolish management modality. And today, when we were in the university criticizing Obasanjo, criticizing Shagari, we, who were student union leaders then, are repeating the same penny-wise, pound-foolish modality of concentrating things in Lagos and doing it in error. Bad planning, bad implementation. Stuffing things in Lagos that are irrelevant and that cause waste. Today we are losing 20 billion naira daily from Lagos. On the average, what are we making? What are we making? If we convert it to dollars, we are losing approximately $50 million daily. And in dollar, what are we earning from the two ports in Lagos? $2 million. Those are pennies. So we are earning pennies in Lagos, in that dirty slum, in those dilapidated structures we keep there and call ports. You can't even wear a tie, a white shirt and enter that port. Why can't you? If I enter a port in Liverpool, I can dress fine, I can walk fine, I can even bring my children to the port. I can't enter a port in Nigeria, particularly Lagos or Tinka. It's a ghetto. And we sustain those structures, backward as they are. Make a note of it. These are structures of backwardness and poverty. That's what they are. I give credit to what's her name, Hadiza Bala Usman. She has improved slightly the income from our ports, slightly. But based on the previous history of stupidity and corruption and backwardness, it has been significant. It has been magnificent. It's almost 100%. But it's still not good enough. We are earning $2 million in a day where we can make $100 in a day. You see the disparity? Then we are now adding Lekki. Lekki within a tiny little Lagos. We keep forgetting that Lagos is a tiny little island. You see, when you live in Lagos, you forget Lagos is a tiny little island. And we need to remind our brothers and friends in Lagos, that is what Lagos is. Tiny little island. We have 850 kilometers of coastal waters. You concentrate on 25 kilometers of Lagos only? Why? What about Bonny? Why can't we have a deep sea in Bonny? Why can't we have a deep sea in Port Harcourt? Why can't we have a deep sea in Akwa Ibom? Akwa Ibom, they are working on it. Ayade, Cross River State Governor, is developing one in Bakassi. Why can't we have a deep sea port there that is functional? And why should we, besides Lekki, there are also Badagry. There's plan for Badagry. Do you know that? Badagry deep sea, yes, sir. And what is all that for? In Lagos, that the trailers and other transport difficulties have already crippled the movement. The railway lines are not working because of right of way. Even within the railway corporation itself, the goods and the materials they need to repair their road, they is stuck there in the port there in the congestion. They can't even clear it fast enough. These are critical issues of waste that we have to review. Okay. So futuristically speaking, looking at Lagos is penny wise, pound foolish. Lastly, sir, when you move business from Lagos to Aba, you move to Aba Dry Port, Lagos is not losing anything. We are making the 44 million that we lose on a daily basis, what Aba is reclaiming as a port. When you move business to Onitsha Port, Lagos is losing nothing, sir. Lagos is losing nothing. So Lagos has this greedy mentality that everything has to be in Lagos. It's a regional backward mentality that we have to deal with.
No, well, I think money is not. Well, the region doesn't operate the ports. Neither is the region, the one that uses the ports, as it were. I was just wondering, NIWA Managing Director, Chief George Morgano, earlier you talked about the fact that, fine, now there's there's a commencement of patronage of some of the eastern ports. Maersk Line, one of the largest shipping lines in the world, started using the ports. But here is the point. What kind of cargoes are we seeing now on the eastern flank in the first instance? And what kind of cargoes can also be encouraged to go through the eastern flank? Because part of the congestion you find in and around the Apapa area, and by extension elsewhere in Lagos, also has to do with the distribution of refined petroleum products. Because our pipeline networks have been savaged and damaged, you have a lot of tankers that are going to the tank farms around the Apapa area. And one of those tank farms caught fire lately, put out after 24 hours. Are we likely to also encourage, because the importers of refined petroleum products, which is something that we're going to experience for some time because none of the 4 refineries we have are up to scratch in the meantime, are we likely to encourage the importers of refined petroleum products, assuming there are tank farms at other parts of the country, to say, look, take your cargo there, take your refined petroleum products there, so that the tankers, the many tankers we find on Lagos roads and around the Apapa area can also go to those locations?
And before you answer that, let me just give this addition in that regard. Maybe you had Oyewole talking Larry there. How do you make people like him, all right, be attracted to other ports than Lagos?
Incentivizing them to go. Yeah,
yes, like I said, when I talked about the eastern ports initially, I know that the NTA has introduced a lot of incentives to encourage the business community to use the eastern ports. Like I said also, one of the things that I need to do based on my interaction, because I've met with the business community, the Chambers of Commerce, the Importers Association, and the business community in Onitsha. One of the things they talked about is that if we can get Onitsha a port of destination so that they can now order their goods directly to Onitsha, they can do their clearing in Onitsha and things. These are part of the things that need to be done. Like we were talking about the cargoes that come. I can boldly say without fear of contradiction that over 50-60% of containerized cargo that come to Onitsha or that come to Lagos are destined for Onitsha.
That's correct.
Yeah. And Aba.
Yeah.
All right. So if that is the case.
But why do they end up in Lagos?
Yes, because one, you may have the issue of before this time, there were no incentives. Secondly, Onitsha, as we speak, it's not a port of destination, neither is Barra a port of destination. So these are some of the encouragement you can give. Now, because if you look at the history of Onitsha River Port, for example, since it was built over 42 years ago, commissioned in 2012, not one barge has come down till the 16th of last month when we tried to break that jinx. So what pushed me is to do something that has not been done before, because people have the impression that it cannot work. Yeah. So we needed to clear that jinx, that it can work. It has not worked because it has not been done.
Now, what do we do now in order to make these ports of destination?
Yeah.
And particularly also for the distribution of refined petroleum products.
Yes, I will get to that.
Yes.
The process is on with regards to making it a port of destination. Because of our time issue, when I had a meeting with the Pengasan, we have even gone to the extent of signing an MOU so that they can use the waterways to move petroleum products. I'm not of the school of thought that we must put all our farm tanks near the port. No, I don't believe in that. I don't accept that, because it's part of the challenge we are having now. If we projected the size of our economy, if we projected the rise in population and what have you, and the business interests, I don't see why we should have allowed all those tank farms to be built within the entire port area. What's wrong with moving them out? And that is why, if we develop our inland water transportation system, why not? You can have your tank farm a lot distant from the port, and then you move your cargo from the port as they arrive straight to your tank farm, directly from the port. Wow. For example, now we are talking with a group that wants to do tank farms in Lokoja, because they are projecting into the future, because they know that the moment we complete the river port in Lokoja, and then it's made a port of destination, what is wrong with moving cargo destined for Lokoja, and then they can move it by barges through the inland waterways to their tank farm in Lokoja? But now it may appear not to be a good business idea, but they are looking into the future. It's a futuristic plan that, if we put it into concrete terms, will be of benefit to our economy and to the nation at large. So containerized cargo, everything has to be done to encourage inland waterway transportation, because the moment we do that, I am of the school of thought that it is the catalyst to decongest our ports.
And same thing with the dry ports too.
Correct.
Game changers.
Yeah.
All right. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Just a number of tweets that we have from our viewers. We'll quickly go through them, and then probably have time to just take one or two closing thoughts. Aleo Umar Karaye says the congestion of ports can only be achieved when there is provision of good roads and railway from the seaports to various locations in the country. Reducing taxes and other unnecessary bills will also assist.
Akeju Olaboju says, just a visit to Apapa or Tinkan ports will reveal that the congestion is human-made for profit gains. It is of no excuse that the other ports outside Lagos are underutilized with facilities on ground. NTA must be decisive on terminal operators to halt congestion.
Dele Jack Solomon, the issues you are raising here, you're saying, what is government doing with regards to alternative smaller barges at ports such as those of Calabar, Warri, Rivers, to accommodate larger ones? Secondly, what is the government doing on security concerns due to piracy?
Francis Obi says there are lots of bottlenecks in clearing of goods, and it should not be left under the company to be clearing. All the clearing agents know what they are facing and have been complaining about it.
Chris Simeon, congestion at Apapa Seaport is pathetic. NPA should ensure that inflow and outflow are well organized. Cranes and skilled personnel or operators should be deployed to the ports.
Innocent Yawal James says reviving the other seaports to optimum service delivery, where ships will have an alternative route to Nigeria, will help decongest even the almighty Lagos-Ibadan Road, thereby raking in more revenues and creating more jobs.
Ogwayen Christian, it would be a great idea, for the government to decongest the Lagos ports and create more entry routes in other parts of the country. The Ibeno port in Akwa Ibom State should be supported by the federal government, and more barges should be directed to Onitsha, and escravos should be rejigged.
And for Badamasi Haruna Adamu, we can only achieve that by executing our policies. A lot has been said on the decongestion, but nothing has been done. More so, decentralization of seaports to other geographical zones of the country to give room for competition.
All right, let's take Usman Bani County. Says decongesting seaports in Nigeria is a collective responsibility of the Transportation Ministry, Customs, and other line MDAs, as well as instituting transparent clearing system and the establishment of more functional dry ports in Nigerian capitals. There are already dry ports. It's how to use them.
All over the place,
and use them effectively. That's the key point, yes. It's not so much the absence of dry ports.
That's it on the Twitter segment of this program. We will now take final thoughts in this regard. We have less than 2 minutes to round up this program. Let's see how you give us, or what you would give us as a final thought about the, projections made in this program, especially from the other panelists. Hassan Bello, what is your final thought in 30, 45 seconds about, especially what you talked about, the digitization, the Lekki Port, and the other areas you mentioned? How do you want Nigerians to accept this as novel and game changers?
Nigerians, just like Larry said, we look at the brighter side of things. I don't want to be as despondent as my friend Mani. However, I think there's a lot of future. We are getting things together. The economy must take shape. We have to depend on the maritime industry more and more, not as an alternative, but as an option to the oil industry. And we are talking about many $1 trillion, $6 trillion industry if the maritime industry is well structured. And we're on that path with infrastructure, with openness, transparency, efficiency, competition. I think this will all come together in the nearest future. But we need to also have attitudinal changes, in the way we do things. We need to be transparent, support the government, which is doing a lot in infrastructure. It's not only the infrastructure, but the processes. Call-up system on trucks. Nobody should just come to the road just to beat or shunt. A lot of mannerism will have to change. And I think in that transport sector, I think we have found, the path, and we are getting there. And that will reflect positively on Nigeria's economy.
Bello, Executive Secretary, Chief Executive Officer, Nigeria Shippers Council. Oyewole Lanre, please in 30 seconds, if you will. Talk to us finally on your position as regards most especially changing from Lagos to other ports as you try to get out of this nightmare.
Yeah, what I can say is I want to be hopeful. I want to trust the system. And I'm believing, and much has been said from Alhaji Hassan, from Chief George Mogalu, and my dear brother Mane. I think we're on the same page. We want a turnaround. We want a change, a total departure from the old order. We want a situation whereby we can have our business done seamlessly. We want total decongestion. We want them to decentralize this. A reform process. Like I said, my word has maintained my stand that emergency reform policy and Nigerian ports should be that of emergency. We're trusting the government for all the projection I've had this morning. To some extent, I think confidence building process somehow is activated. We're hoping and we're trusting. We want a situation whereby we have a new lease of life when we get into our ports. I'm believing, and I'm undaunted.
All right, Oyewole, thanks a lot. You were advertising your phone there. We're going to have to send you an invoice for that. Well, thanks a lot for your comments. Chief George Mogalu, very briefly. One point, listening to Oyewole, he was saying some things that, he doesn't know what the status of some of the eastern ports are, whether the roads there are okay or not, and so on. I was just wondering, shouldn't viable ports also advertise themselves to potential users? If they're not doing it now, what stops them from doing it?
Yes, that is a process we're into now, encouraging people, getting them understand the potentials Like I told you, I talked to the business community. If you look at, it may interest you to know that there's a concession in process now about Onitsha River Port, and then people have shown interest again in participating in the concession of the Barrow Port. So you find out that we keep talking with them, we keep encouraging them, and what we have just done by way of doing the badge operation was just strictly to let them know that this is possible. And what we do is that we key into it, and then things will start working.
All right. Thank you very much, Chief George Moghalu, Managing Director, NEWA. That's the National Inland Waterways Authority. We appreciate your being with us on the program this morning. Mane Chuboju, Transportation Consultant and Lawyer. Thank you very much for your being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. From Lagos, we're joined by Oyewole Lanre, who is Managing Director, Boss Auto Detail. We appreciate your being with us this morning. And Alhaji Hassan Bello, Executive Secretary, CEO, Shippers Council. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. So that does it for us today on the program. We thank you for being around. We are back tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. Until then, do take care of yourself and be fair and kind to each other. I'm Kingsley Uzadolo.
And I am Yusuf Ndabusuma. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.